small churches often feel like they cannot compete in the digital world, but the truth is you don't need a mega budget or a huge team to make an impact online. So in this video, I'm going to show you the top 4 things you can do to focus and grow your church digitally without being overwhelmed. So stick around. Now, I've been a pastor for 7-ish years now, and when I was first starting out, I learned something very quickly, that if I want to communicate well in person, I need to communicate well online. And part of the problem I think we all run into when trying to communicate is we don't know what our bottom line is. Okay, we don't know what we're trying to say. And if you're going to give a sermon, if you're going to give a word or talk to somebody, sometimes it can be clouded in confusion, and it could be like, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. But the best communicators are the ones who say, this is what you need to know. This is why you need to know it. This is what you need to do. And this is why you need to do it. And I took that out of Andy Stanley's book, but it's the same way online. When you know what your goal is, then you can communicate that more effectively. So my first tip for you guys is you really need to clarify your mission, and you need to clarify your audience. Now, I know as a church that might sound crazy, but in order to understand what I mean is I like to walk churches through this. Okay. What is your demographic, your average demographic of your church? And for a lot of smaller churches, it's 65 plus or, 50 plus. And I say, okay, what is your goal? And typically I'm met with we would love to reach new families, because new families means kids, means youth. It means, you're raising up the generation after. And so I say, okay, so if this is your demographic and you're trying to reach the target audience of young families, you need to go where they are online. You're not going to walk into a tire shop and say, can I get an ice cream cone? Because that's not what they serve. That's not what they do. That's not the right audience. And it's the same way with online. If you want to reach young families, go to Facebook, go to Instagram, go where those young families are. And I'm not saying you should target specifically to youth to attract young families. You need to target their parents. So Google Ads is a great way to target young families, because a lot of people move into town all the time. And if they're believers and they're searching for churches near them, you want to be found on Google. Why wouldn't you? So you need to clarify your mission. You need to clarify your audience, and then you need to work out the problem. Okay. Why can't we get these people? What part of our communication needs to change? How can we target them more effectively? The second thing you need to do is, again, this might sound like a no-brainer, but you need to optimize your church website. I feel like a broken record when I say this, but it has to be mobile friendly. It has to be clear, and it has to be inviting. Too often, I think churches do this thing where they just leave their website, and it's the same website they've had for 5 years. I've seen a lot where it's not even the same lead pastor. Some of the staff pastors are gone. You don't know what's going on. You don't know if there's a kids ministry, a youth ministry. And then people almost get defensive when it's like, well, I didn't know. And it's like, well, you should just be informed. Well, how can I be informed if your website isn't up to date? And this is not a crazy thought. This is not a crazy thing. You see in businesses all the time, their website is constantly up to date. So why should churches be different? Why do we in the church world think it's fine to just simply have a website? Okay. It's not good enough to just have a website. You need to be updating your website. And above all else, you have to make it mobile friendly. It's more than half of internet users online are looking at it on their phone. And sometimes, honestly, this happened last week. I saw a fantastic church website. I was like, this is really cool. But then I went on it on my cell phone, and it was absolutely unusable. So honestly, at that point, I was like, what's the point? Because to me, what it really says is they're not thinking about that user. And they're not having the thought process go into it about these mobile users. And again, I might be reading into that a little bit, but that's where my brain goes. And it's the same thing with your church website. If it's not up to date, why are you not thinking about that audience online? And I think a lot of pastors make the mistake of saying, well, I can't see the audience, so they're not real. But there's a lot more people online than are currently sitting in your church on a Sunday morning. The third thing you need to do is you need to engage on social media. And I'm not just talking about, a post and responding to comments. That's a part of it. But you need to post consistently. And what I mean about consistency is it's not only posting regularly. Like you can't take any weeks off. But be consistent in your tone, be consistent in your style, be consistent in what you communicate about and what you offer. Nobody follows someone on Instagram or any social media because they love to post and then they're super happy that every post is different here on out. No, they follow someone because they like their style. It's the same thing with the church. Define your style a little bit or outsource it to someone who can create a style for you if you don't know how. But you need to post consistently on social media and also interact. It goes a long way. One thing I personally love doing, for some reason, one of my clients, they get a lot of angry comments on YouTube, which I think is it's funny and it's standard for YouTube. But what I personally love to do is I love to go respond to those comments because they're hilarious. We had a couple comments that said like, "Shut up, bald boy," to the pastor of the church. And it cracked me up. And I said, what? And I just responded. And it's funny. Not everything has to be so serious, but if you're gonna post on social media, don't be afraid to engage in comments. And there's a lot of good tools out there. It's not like you have to log on to Instagram, Facebook, and all of these things and just respond one by one to individual comment. You can pull them together and respond from a thread. But the other thing is you also need to share meaningful content. Okay, your social media is not your church's announcement forum. Okay, don't do it. Let your website be that. Let it be for announcements. But social media really is about meaningful content. And what I like to say too is it's about adding value. If someone comes across your content, what value was added to their life, to their person by having done that? And I think when you switch your mindset a little bit and you say, I want to add value to the person, not just get them to follow me, then, the follows will come, the shares will come, the comments, the likes, all that stuff will come. I live and breathe by the field of dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come. And if you're faithful to build a platform that shares meaningful content, that's spiritually edifying, that's biblically sound, I do believe that people are going to be drawn to that, because the reality is people are drawn to truth. And everywhere there are thousands, millions, billions of people searching for truth. And you might get upset because there's so many churches. How can I compete? But that's already the wrong mindset. You're not competing with these other churches. You are offering God's truth in a world that needs it desperately. So if we can shift our mindsets around church social media a little bit and understand that the church down the road isn't your enemy, or Elevation and Bethel and all these big churches aren't your enemy, just understand that when you're posting on social media, you're being faithful to the message that God has given you. And I fully believe, because I've seen it, that God is faithful to bring those people. I had a client who I took on their social media content, and I was posting 4 or 5 times a week, pretty consistently, every week, no weeks off. And for whatever reason, this woman found this client online, and she started engaging in the church fully digitally. She started attending online digitally. She started commenting, sharing. The pastors had never met this woman, and she started tithing online. And it more than made up for what they were paying for me to do their social media. So it's just crazy. It goes to show that it might be an investment in the front end, but it's always worth it, because 1, you're getting the message of Christ out there, but 2, you're also building connections within your community. It's nice to have followers and high following counts and all those things, but it's even better to build meaningful spiritual connections with people who are right down the road. Okay. The fourth thing I'd suggest is leverage email and leverage text messaging. Now, I think text messaging is a little weird sometimes because not everyone wants to give out their phone number. And it's also, there's a lot of regulations, if you're in the United States, from the FCC about text messaging. So there's been a lot of laws that have passed in the past couple of years that make it ridiculous and difficult. But there are some good options out there. But you should absolutely be using email. Okay. If you think your website isn't informing your congregants well enough, okay, you could say, let me do a pamphlet. Let me make my announcements long and make sure they know everything. Let me do a bulletin board. Let me do a church calendar. You could do all those things, but I would argue use a newsletter once a month, once a week newsletter where you show, here are our upcoming events, here's the sermon series, here's all these things. So not only can they read it and be informed, but they can then go back and read it and be informed. And it's new every week or every month, depending on whatever day you want to post. But use an email newsletter. And for new people that come into your church, I don't know how you collect your data, but what my church does is we get a Connect card, we fill it out. If it's a physical Connect card, we then fill it out, create them a profile, and then automatically they get an email welcoming them to our church. And I think that's just such a good way to bring people into the fold. It doesn't have to just be, create a Connect card or fill out a Connect card and then never hear from you. There should be a follow-up within 24 hours. So those are kind of my tips to you guys. Like I said, I've been a pastor for 7 years. I've kind of seen a thing or two, have clients where I help this with, but if this video did help you, be sure to like and subscribe for more church growth tips. And let me know in the comments, what has been your biggest challenge in communicating effectively online? I would love to help. I'd love to hear from you guys. So I'll see you in the next one.